G'day South Australia and welcome to the Inclusive Classroom Part 2, Writing Support. So today we're going to be looking, as the title says, we're going to be looking at writing support. We're going to be looking at how you can use your Microsoft tools to support you with writing and to directly support your students with their writing as well. So my name's Troy. I am a learning delivery specialist from Microsoft Education Australia. My role is to go around these lovely southern states, South Australia included, and tell everyone about all the awesome things that you can do. My role as well as an accessibility lead means that I get to also share the great things that you can do with, giving those extra bit of support to those kids that need it. So today we're going to, as I said, we're going to be focusing on, I'm going to close that down. We're going to be focusing on writing in particular. I'm going to jump over here into our agenda. We're going to first look at the Microsoft Educator community and sort of play around there a little bit, tell you some of the cool things that are in there for you, but we've laboured on that on a lot of our other webinars. We're going to look at the inclusive classroom again and how we at Microsoft define that, but then we're going to start jumping into why you're here, which is looking specifically at writing support with Dictate. We're going to look at writing support with Immersive Reader as well, remembering that our inclusive classroom number 1 really focused on Immersive Reader. So this webinar really assumes that you've seen that. If you haven't, that's okay. I'm going to give you a link where you can go back and you can access the part 1. Then we'll look at Editor. An Editor is sort of a revamped version of spell checker on steroids, I guess is a good way to put it. It's really quite cool. We'll look at that in the Windows, in the Windows 10 app for Word, but we'll also look at it online. Then we'll talk about word prediction and the cool things you can do with that in Windows 10. Sorry, Mac users, this one's going to be just a Windows 10 demo at that point. And then we'll look at writing with the Word desktop app as well. Then next steps, we'll have a bit of a Q&A. So let's get moving. So our mission is to empower every person and every organisation on the planet to achieve more. And you can see there again, I've underlined every person, because what's cool about this is when we talk about the inclusive classroom, it's reaching out to every student, right? It's giving as much support as we can to both ends of what we call that special needs spectrum. We've got special needs for kids that need that extra support because they've got challenges, but we've also got kids that have challenges because they're gifted as well. And some of these tools can actually be working at both ends of that spectrum. So let's jump in. Education.microsoft.com is the Microsoft Educator Center. So I'm just going to jump in there and show you this. So there we go. It's education.microsoft.com. That's the Educator Center. Now we've got individual courses which you can access. We've got learning paths, which are groups of courses that you can access. And we've also got an account for you when you join this website, which will actually keep a record of everything that you've done. Now, remembering I've said this before, these courses meet the AICSL standards, so they are recognised as PD that you can demonstrate back to the South Australian Teacher Registration Board, right? So the TRB will count this as PD. So no more needing to go across town during the holidays to get your PD hours up. You can actually come in here and do this PD. Just make sure that you sign in, use your Learn link, email address and password when you sign in, create an account, and then it will connect with that. And then later on, you can go back and view your achievements. So again, these courses in here, I want to just take you in and show you, if you start to type in words like inclusivity, you're going to see that there's a number of really cool courses in there around accessibility. You can see here one, accessibility tools, meeting the needs of diverse learners, empower every student with an inclusive classroom, and a whole heap of other courses in there for you. So I want to stress that this is something that is really good. And if you want to go back and review what we've looked at today and what we've talked about, definitely come back in and jump into this course in particular, Empower Every Student with an Inclusive Classroom. All right, so that's that. That's education.microsoft.com. Now, remembering when we log into Office, we can just go to www.office.com or just office.com. When you sign in to office.com, make sure that you sign in using your schools.sa.edu email address, okay, so it's your ID at schools, and then of course your LearnLink password, and that's going to get you into that. All right, so remembering that's how we sign in. Now, when we talk about Office though, I do want to just quickly draw some distinctions about some of the different versions of Office that are out there. Now, we all use Office, and almost everybody in the workforce now has some sort of relationship with Office, whether that's Outlook or Word or PowerPoint, etc. But Office 2019 is an older version of Office, even though you might look at it and say it's only a year old. Actually, it's 2 years old. To confuse us, it came out in 2018. All right, but that version of Office does not mature. And when we're talking about accessibility features, you're going to look at, maybe when you open up your version of Word or your version of Outlook, and you're going to say, hey, mine's not doing what Troy's was doing. And that could be because you're back on Office 2019 or, God forbid, on Office 2016. Okay, so we have another version of Office that lives in the cloud, which is Office 365, but there's another version of Office that you have access to as a department employee, and also the students have access to this as well, and it's called Microsoft 365 apps. Okay, so this is the version of Office that I want you to download, and I want you to get this onto your work machine, and I also want you to introduce it to your students as well, and I'm going to show you how to access that, because everybody in the state in the state education system has 5 free copies. That's every teacher, every student. So you can put it on your PC, you can put it on your Mac, and you can put it on your mobile devices as well. So I'm just going to quickly show you how we access that. And so when we come into office.com, what happens is up here, there's a little button here that says Install Office. We click on that and we throw in those Office 365 apps, all right? So what we do is we come in on our machine, we sign into office.com, we click on this Install Office, and then we click there, and that's going to give us the latest, greatest version of Office and all those accessibility features, so that you can say, yes, my machine is doing exactly what Troy's machine was doing, and the students will see that as well. It's very important that you do that though, because a lot of the accessibility features are being rolled out all the time, and we don't want a 2-year or a 5-year-old version of Office. We want the latest, greatest version. And when you do install Microsoft 365 apps, then that will constantly update itself with features, and it will constantly be the latest, greatest version of Office. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Again, to get that, you go to office.com. Once you're into office.com, you come up here, install Office, and then click on that and follow the instructions, and that will put on the latest, greatest version. Okay, very cool. Now let's talk a little bit about engaging every learner in a diverse K-12 classroom. Look at some of these stats. These are Aussie stats. Up to 50% of instructional time can be lost to managing students' needs, including assistive technology. All right, so that's a lot of time being lost from the teacher's focus, from the aide's focus, and even from the student's own focus and what's going on in the classroom. Virtually 100% of schools in Australia have students with identified learning difficulties enrolled. There may be a couple somewhere, but really it's pretty much every school that's got students with some sorts of challenge. So this is not the fringe, this is mainstream. About 20%, or 1 in 5 of students in Australian schools require inclusive education support. Again, so this is a mainstream issue. This is not a workshop for, special schools and that kind of thing, although definitely if you're from a special school, this is going to be useful to you. I'm really stressing that this is for everybody. And then about 1 in 4, or a quarter of Australian students are from a language background other than English. So when we talk about the inclusive classroom, we want to build a foundation for success. So the inclusive classroom tools give students more personalised access to their curriculum, optimise educator time, and improve learning outcomes. We want to see students increase their independence, but at the same time experience a reduction of stigma. So that's why it's cool that this stuff is, we're talking about Office, we're talking about Windows, we're talking about, our Macs, our PCs. We're not just talking about special software and special hardware. It's what everybody's using. So there's a reduction in stigma because it's the same software and the same devices as everybody else in the room, not just for the kids that, in inverted commas, need it. Educators are more empowered to engage every learner. We want to make sure that this technology is going to support those support the teachers, right, and not be something that they have to, manage and get their head around. It's all about students doing it themselves. And then institutions are going to build reputations as positive places that promote equity and inclusion. Now, I'm just going to say that I'm still working from home and I've got a dog who's running around my feet here, so I'm really hoping he's not going to make loud noises. So I apologize if he does, but he's just playing around at my feet. All right, so the inclusive classroom, we're looking at reading support is what we looked at last time. Okay, so we looked at how Immersive Reader can support reading. Today we're going to focus on writing, but we also have math support and we also have speaking and listening. But today, definitely our focus is going to be on this one, which is writing support. So where we start with this is we start with dictate. Okay, so dictation or speech to text is available across multiple platforms, right? And there's multiple tools out there. Okay, so whether you're using Siri on your phone or whether you're using something like Alexa or some of these other tools, we know that Microsoft doesn't have a monopoly on this, but where it becomes really powerful is the fact that it is actually built into Office. So the productivity tools that students are using, that teachers are using, actually get that level of accessibility support. So we're going to look at how this in Office is going to allow students to speak into their device, and then that written text will appear in whatever program they're using. So it's a quick and easy way to create drafts, outline notes, or just get thoughts out onto text. So first of all, what we're going to look at today is we're going to look at Dictate, which is available first of all in Word online. Okay, so that's Word in your browser. We're going to have a look at how we're going to access that, but it's also available in Word in the Windows 10 app. Okay, so you can also access it on your on your PC. So let's have a look first at Word here. I'm going to open up, I've got to make sure I'm in the right tool. Here we go. Yep. So this is actually Microsoft Word inside the browser. So I'm just using this whether you're coming in through Chrome or Edge or whatever browser you happen to use. And you can see here that if I was to go to office.com and then click on the Word icon, then it's going to open that up in my machine. And you can see that Dictate lives over here. Now, I've already clicked it before I started, so the button is actually down here. But you can see I have a settings wheel as well. So I have the ability to change my language. Okay, so English, US, French, etc. Now I'm going to scroll down because I want to use English Australia because I want it to hear my accent. Okay, and then I can also decide, this is new by the way, very, very new. Do I want to allow auto punctuation? That is, it will listen for the pausing and throw punctuation in, or do I want to punctuate this myself? Now in this instance, because we're thinking about it within a school context, I think it's good to leave auto punctuation off so that way the student has to know when they're going to punctuate, when they're going to use full stops and commas and things like that. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see this. I'm going to make this about 26. There we go. And now I'm going to click on this button here, and then I'm going to start to speak to this. Last Christmas holidays, I played with my puppy Brandy, full stop. I sprayed water at her, full stop. I wrestled her and I played soccer with her, full stop. We sat down together, comma, we said jokes to each other, comma, we played and played until I had to go into the house and eat lunch, full stop. I said to her, comma, open quotes, you're amazing, exclamation mark, close quotes. Okay, so there we go. So I bet when you were looking at that, you were thinking, what's going on? It's just all messy, but you can see that the AI actually caught up with me, okay, because I have to be connected to the internet to use this, and you can see there that I also punctuated. So looking back at this, you can see it did a pretty good job. Maybe here, I'd know that I'd probably throw in a capital letter, etc., but it's pretty good. But you can see there that I actually chose, as I said, to punctuate because I want to simulate there being a student, and I want the student to know, where they need to comma, where they need to, open quote, close quote, exclamation point, etc. And I'm going to show you some of those. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to show you some of those there. So you can see there, you can say period in, being very American, or you can say full stop, comma, question mark, etc. There's a whole heap of those things in there. So a moment ago, the student that was unable to write was unable to get their ideas onto the paper, and now they can dictate. And I'll tell you a true story. There's a little boy who was a grade 5 boy last year who had never been able to get his story onto the paper. He had too much trouble holding a pen, and he was dysgraphic, and all kinds of things were going on with this poor little guy. And he was absolutely over the moon when he was able to get his ideas down on paper. And what blew the teacher away was the teacher was actually totally blown away that he did know about the structure of the narrative genre. So he knew about his introduction of his characters and his setting and his sequence of events and his conclusion and resolution and all that kind of stuff. It was all there in his head, but nobody knew that he was actually able to do that because these things were sort of hidden from him. All right, or hidden from us, I should say, until he was able to get that out on the paper, on the page. So where does Dictate live? Well, I've just shown you that Dictate does live in Word Online, and Dictate does live in Word in the Windows 10 app, but it's also available. So let's talk about the desktop apps. It's available in Word, it's available in PowerPoint, it's available in Outlook, and it's available in OneNote. Those are the desktop apps. But when it comes to the online apps, you can find it in Word, you can find it in OneNote, and you can find it in PowerPoint. All right, so those are the ones for the web, which means that regardless of what device you're coming on, if you're on a browser, you're going to be able to dictate. Now, when we think about Immersive Reader, and again, I want to encourage you to go back and look at our last webinar, but Immersive Reader is this free tool that aids with independent reading and comprehension. And because it lives in so many different apps and platforms, it's helping readers with many different aspects of learning. So there are features within this tool that read the text out aloud, break it into syllables, provide options for visual layout, such as spacing between lines and letters or colours and themes. So please, if you didn't already access that webinar, go back and I'm going to blow your mind if you go back and watch that webinar and you've never seen Immersive Reader. But writing can also take place when the Immersive Reader is being used. So it allows students to consume text with their visual preferences as well as hear their writing read aloud, okay? So sometimes students can actually write, but when they go back to try to read their own writing, they get stuck. So actually having the automation of Immersive Reader read it back to them is a game changer for some kids. So now students who can't see their errors for whatever reasons, they can hear them, they can create their revisions and edits with their own voice, and they can hear it read back to them through the entire process. All right, so I'm going to show you now where I think the power of Dictate coming together with Immersive Reader. So let me jump into that over here. Now I want you to imagine that I have, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for us. I want you to imagine that I have dictated this, all right? So as a student, I have dictated my, my writing myself, and I've got it out there, but I can't see my errors, I can't hear the subtleties, etc. But when I come in and I click on View and come into Immersive Reader, let's let that load up. Now what I can do is I can actually listen to my errors.
Guide about fixing our fence.
Oh, let's start here.
Last week, me and my dad went to see a guy about fixing our fence. He was really expensive, about $300. So Dad decided to try another guy. Then we went to see him and he was cheaper.
All right, so you can hear there that as that student is listening to that, there's absolutely no punctuation, there's no spacing, there's no breaks, etc. And if there were spelling errors, then the student would be able to hear that as well. So imagining that the student has dictated, okay, but then just because they've got the words on the page doesn't mean that it's structured well, doesn't mean that it's spelled correctly and all those kinds of things. So the student can actually go back and listen to their errors. All right, so that's really cool, that mixing of Immersive Reader with Dictate. Now, another thing I want to show you though is I want to show you Dictate inside of Outlook. Okay, because when we mix Read Aloud with Dictate inside Outlook, it actually opens up a whole area of communication that you may not have even been aware of that students are locked out of. Okay, so I want you to imagine we're in a secondary scenario and the teacher is sending emails to the students and the student may have trouble decoding that email. Okay, so they're going to be needing Read Aloud, but they also may have trouble responding to the teacher. So I'm going to take you into an email now. All right, so this is where we're using that Read Aloud Immersive Reader style with the Dictate. So what happens is the teacher sent an email to the student here, and the student cannot access it. All right, so what we need to do is first of all we want to do the read aloud. So as we type in read aloud there, and then there's the button comes up, I click on that. Why is that not opening for me? Come on, you can do this. This is what we call the demo gods are not smiling.
Voila.
So let's start it up here.
Dear students, this is to let everyone know that the assignment extension has been granted. It is no longer due on Friday but is instead due next Thursday, the 18th of June. Regards, Mr. Waller.
All right, so that's very important information that student needs to know, right? That the assignment has been extended, you don't have to have it done by Friday, etc. Now, that student would be locked out of that communication, but of course they can hit the read aloud. But what I want to show you is when we hit reply, and I'm just going to drag this email. So I've hit reply, and you'll have to forgive me with that. Let's get rid of that there. But now if I want to write back to my teacher, okay, what I can do is I can find the dictate button, okay, and I know the dictate button lives in here. Now I have the ability to choose my language, etc., but all I need to do is click dictate. Hi teacher, new line. Thanks very much for that. I'll make sure that I get my assignment in on time. Full stop, new line. See you soon, teacher. Okay, so there we go. Now that student is actually able to dictate their email, and then they can click send. All right, so it was once upon a time a mode of communication which is very common in a secondary environment that was actually excluding students. Now, by using this inside Outlook, the student can have their emails read to them, but also can be writing back to their teacher as well. All right, let's keep moving. Now, the next thing we think about with writing is when we want to support students to write, we know, teachers know that fixing everything is not productive. We want to encourage students to choose what's most important, all right, or what we're focusing on at that time. Tackling everything at once can be overwhelming. So again, we want to help the student to break it down. And we also want to let students self-assess their writing, okay? So they can clearly see what it is that they need to work on. So let's talk about spell check, all right? Now you can see here, this is the way that most of us know spell check today. We see a word, it's got a little squiggle under it. We right click and we get a drop down like this. For many of us, that's all we need. We find the right word and on we go. But for kids that are suffering for something like dyslexia or other text challenges, you can see there that they're going to have difficulty perceiving the differences, etc. All right, so spell check software typically shows a list of spelling suggestions, and when you right click or tap a flagged word, you get the drop down like we've seen there. But with something like dyslexia, for example, they have difficulty selecting that correctly spelled word, even though it's right there in front of them. So they have difficulty, as you can see there, perceiving the differences. And those similarly spelled words, they can't tell the difference between these, and they don't know, which one is correct, etc. So this is due to what we call visual attention challenges, or challenges remembering the spelling rules, or an absence of visual memory, tracing the correctly spelled word, etc. So it didn't help that Office used to have the spelling menus like this. For some of us it was okay, but for people that were challenged by text, it didn't necessarily help them. And this is where it's important that we are not using an older version of Office, because we've progressed. The second thing that happens is there's too many choices, right? So that's going to slow decision making and cause what's called decision fatigue, right? So for our younger students, it's too much going on and it's going to slow them down. So this applies to everybody, but it's especially pertinent to young writers who have more difficulty with reading speed and accuracy and slower processing times. And then thirdly, we have what we're calling these unique spelling error patterns. They can cause words to look very different from the intended word. So historically, spell checkers have optimized to show a smaller number of highly likely suggestions for the most common error patterns. Therefore, it often didn't have suggestions for unusual spelling error patterns such as these. All right, so I'm going to take you in. I'm going to show you what that looks like inside Word. So I am now inside Word, the Windows 10 version, okay? And you can see here that when I come to a word, I've got this word principle. Now what happens is when I right click on that word principle, you can see here that what we've done is we've actually got the word, and then underneath are the synonyms. Okay, so instead of looking at it and just seeing three words, we're actually getting these synonyms, which is going to suggest the correct word to us because we can help it via the context. But even still, if you're challenged by text, that's not going to help a lot. So what we've got over here is we've got the read aloud right inside the spell check. So when I click on this now and click read aloud.
Principal, similar to, main, leader, superintendent. Principal, similar to, code, source, rule. Principled, similar to, honorable, righteous, upright.
So the student is able to not only hear the word, okay, so there's a difference between principle and principled, but they can also hear the synonyms, right? So that's going to give them that little bit of extra help. So you can see that the spell check is actually much more feature rich or much more able than it was before. So we've chosen to show synonyms as opposed to definitions or usage samples because they're the most efficient at the level of reading, right? So the fewest words are required to convey enough information to make a decision. And of course, less text will help students, for example, because visual crowding, that is more text, and impaired visual search would be less of an issue. We've also improved the spelling suggestions themselves. We leverage an online spell check engine. So that is, we're connected to the internet right now, and that provides a larger language model and a phonetic spelling component that gives us better suggestions. So what I'm basically telling you is it's not only got those bits and pieces we can see there, but it's actually bringing up better choices for us by using a more powerful AI. All right, so pretty cool. That's what we've got there. Now, I'm going to keep moving because I want to talk to you about a tool called Editor. All right, so when I come back into my document, you can see that Editor lives over here. Okay, there's a little button here, so I'm in Word for Windows 10. And now when I click on Editor, what happens is it actually brings up a little dashboard. Okay, so now we are outside of the text. Okay, now you can see what happens when I pushed on Editor. Not only is it showing my spelling, but it's also showing my grammar errors and bits and pieces. So it's really important that we teach the kids what these squiggly lines and dots and double lines and green lines and things like that. We have to make sure that we teach the kids what they mean so they know what errors they're looking for. All right, so it comes out of the text, making it easier to use. Okay, so the dashboard is living over here. Now I'm going to show you some of my spelling. Now you have to forgive me because I've got the American and the Australian language pack, but you know, you're probably just going to see the Australian language pack, which is fine. But when I click on spelling, what it does is it takes me to my first word, all right, which is down here, principle, and it's now brought the entire sentence outside of the document. So now when I hit the audio,
I could throw it at my principal to scare her.
All right, so I can hear my error, but it's also giving it to me in context. My suggestions are down here, and I can also listen to it as a read aloud. That is just like we heard before.
Principal, similar to, main, leader, superintendent.
But we've also got down here called spell it out, right? Now have a look at this.
Principal.
All right, so it's going to help me by bringing it in context. It's going to read that aloud to me and give me synonyms, and it's even going to spell that out to me. But what's important about here is it's bringing it away from the text, so it's not all that busyness happening over here. It's now happening over here. All right, now you can see as well, I'm just going to jump back out of that, and I want to show you the refinements. Now I'm going to show you ones in the American one here. So you can see here that it's looking for things like clarity, conciseness, formality, inclusiveness, etc. There's a whole heap of different categories that it's actually bringing out for me. All right, so it's a categorized overview of writing enhancement opportunities. So the opportunities, excuse me. So the corrections are issues that you're strongly advised to fix. And the refinements over here, they're giving optional advice on stylistic or situational matters, excuse me. And then the counters and the check marks over here is actually helping me to track progress and to celebrate my achievements. All right, so as I fix those, you can see, hey, look, I'm awesome around, inclusiveness and clarity and that kind of thing as well. So it's going to draw attention to the elements of good writing. So it's going to give your students a dashboard for self-assessment, right? So they can do this themselves. But it also, as a teacher, can come and look at this, and it's going to give the teacher a scorecard to drive the learning goal. So I can look at my students and go, okay, we need to work on formal language, or we need to work on spelling, or whatever it is that we need to work on. It's also going to present the breadth and depth of checks in a manageable way. So this flexible workflow choice, this flexible, I'm going to bring that back there, flexible workflow choice lets you spend time purposefully scrubbing the document one category at a time and fixing in a recommended sequence, right? So I want to show you what I mean by that, because when I come back in here, you can see the little settings wheel down here. When I click on that, and then I scroll down here to my settings, I'm going to click on that one here. You can see I can turn things on and off. All right. So there's going to be a lot of things in here, like clarity. There's sub areas within conciseness, formality. A lot of those may not be relevant to my student. So I'm going to help my student to turn those areas off so they're not overwhelmed with so many changes. They only have to focus on what it is that they need to work on. All right. So that's called Editor inside the Windows 10 app. Now, the next thing I want to show you, though, is I want to show you Editor inside the browser. So again, I'm going to come back into another document here. So here we are inside Word for the browser, okay? And you may not see the editor button yet, but it is being rolled out at the moment into different environments, so it should turn up in your South Australian tenant very, very soon, okay? So if you do come in, I'm click on review. If you don't see it, give it a couple of days, couple of weeks, and it will turn up. But look what happens when I click on the editor button here. Now, when I click on the editor button over here, you can see what it's done for me is it's actually given me a score. All right, so it's calculating a score based on the number and types of suggestions to be reviewed and the document length. Now, I want to point something out. When I come into spelling, it's different in here. It's not as strong as in the full Windows 10 app. When I click on this, I only get the old style drop down. Now I know with over time, Editor Online will actually give us the full synonyms, etc. But if that's what your student's needing, you need to bring them back into the full app. All right. But you can see over here, I've also got refinements and all that kind of thing is happening inside this one as well. Now we've got what's called readability. Okay. Now what readability does? Oh, that's strange. A moment ago that was working. So what readability is going to do, oh, there we go, it's come back. So what readability is going to do is it's going to give me a score based on a reading ease score higher than 60, indicates short words and sentences, which means that most people find it easy to read that kind of writing. And distinct words is going to look at the number of distinct words that occur in the document. A higher number indicates a larger vocabulary. So a student or a teacher can look at that and get a bit of a snapshot on that student's writing. How long does it take to read it? How long does it take to speak it? All right. If there are enhancements, they'll be there as well. And you can also give some feedback down there. All right. Now, there is also a plagiarism checker up here in similarity. OK, so what that's going to do is that's going to look in online sources and let you know, whether the student has actually cut and pasted that from a website, etc. It's not perfect, but it'll certainly, show you some of those things. All right. So that's Editor in the browser. So you're going to find that in Word in the browser. Now, the next thing I want to share with you is word prediction for Windows 10. So just like when you're on your mobile phone, when you start typing in a word, if you turn this on, it will actually bring up suggestions, all right, just like on your mobile phone or your mobile device. And so a student can actually get that little bit of assistance to help them find the word specifically that they're looking for. And this is in Windows 10. It's really easy to find. What you do is when you open up your settings, just start to type the word prediction, and you'll see up here show text suggestions as I type. And that's what we're looking for. You just click on that and that will bring you into the settings. And then you just come down here to hardware keyboard and you just switch that on. All right, so that's going to give a level of support to students. Very easy to turn on and off in Windows 10. Okay, so I've shown you how Immersive Reader works in the online version. But what I want to share with you now is I want to show you Immersive Reader in the Windows 10 app. Now, in our last workshop, we talked a lot about Immersive Reader supporting in the online tool, and it has its strengths. But Immersive Reader is somewhat different in the Windows 10 version of Word, but it's really good for writing. So let me show you. When I come over here to View, and then I click on Immersive Reader, look what happens. It's actually very, very different. Okay, so there's no picture dictionary, there's no parts of speech, and there's no translation, but I can do things like change my column width. It leaves the pictures in, which it didn't do in the online version. I can change the page color. I can also have the line focus as well. I can increase and decrease the text spacing. I can syllabify, and I can also have read aloud. But where this is really good is, unlike Immersive Reader in the online version, where I can't type into when Immersive Reader is running, I can actually do so. So over here now, if I come down into the bottom here of the document, I can start typing, all right, straight into Immersive Reader. So that means it's going to give me a level of flexibility that I can make all the changes inside Immersive Reader. And when I close Immersive Reader, it takes me back to the full document, all right, without all the Immersive Reader additions. Okay, so it's just, I guess I just want to stress again, it's really, really good. Oh, where's my Immersive Reader? It's really, really good for writing, because the student can actually do a little bit of writing and then have it read to them. They can also have all their spacing and all those kinds of things, which they don't get in the online version. But remembering, if you need some of those features from the online version, as well as these features from the Windows 10 version, you can run them at the same time. So here I am, I can run Immersive Reader on the document here, and I can have the document when I'm using it for writing. I can have it down here at the same time. All right, so there we go. So again, I really want to stress that if you're wanting to see the way that Immersive Reader can help with reading, go for the online version, but Immersive Reader helping with writing is in the Windows 10 version. I hope that makes sense to you. All right, we're nearly at the end of this workshop, so let me just keep going and just let you know that remembering Editor is inside Word, is inside OneNote, is inside PowerPoint, so is Dictate, but everything is inside Teams. So when we start to use Teams as our learning platform, we don't need to worry about switching these things on, and will the student have access to these accessibility tools. Because they are inside the tools, inside Teams, it's a brilliant place for us to go and know that we're going to have those accessibility features. All right, next steps. I want to point out to you there is a brand new special education and accessibility resources for remote learning website, web page. However, it is beyond remote learning. So those of you that are back at school, this is still going to be of real strong value to you. And that is at aka.ms/MEC accessibility. We'll make these slides available to you, but there is some awesome stuff on this website here. And I'm going to actually jump in and just show you that. Just give me a minute. I'm going to have to find where my document is. Oh, no, I forgot to load that up. But anyway, that's okay. Again, go back and have a look through that. There's some brilliant tools in there for you. There's also a really good walkthrough around how to use the inclusive writing tools, and that's at aka.ms/inclusive writing demo. That's a really good walkthrough that'll teach you, click here, go there, do this, do that. And I do want to stress that that's a really good resource. Another thing, when you get these slides, the Microsoft Learning Tools availability, have a look here. We've got things like read aloud. We've got things like spacing and font size. We've got dictation, picture dictionary, etc. And when you come across here, you'll see that all the different tools and all the different platforms. So for example, it's available in OneNote desktop, OneNote web, OneNote app, OneNote for iOS, OneNote for Mac, etc. When we come down here for Dictate, okay, we can see that it's in Word on the web. It's also in Word on desktop. We can see it's not in Word for the Mac, etc. So this is a really good place to help you go back and look at what's available in what tools. The other thing I want to share with you is And again, you'll get these slides, but you can go to the MEC and look for that course, Empower Every Student with an Inclusive Classroom. You get some great writing tools, support from this course, and it's a great reference for you. And you'll also get an hour's worth of PD. Again, when you grab these slides, you can come back and find the Disability Answers Desk, which is a 24-hour chat, but it's also a 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday and Sunday phone service. So you can call someone and they will give you support around disability answers. You can also go to the Microsoft Accessibility YouTube channel, which is, again, you can grab that link or just look for Microsoft Accessibility when you get into YouTube. There's some great videos around how to do more than just the writing support, a lot of other stuff as well. And you can also give your feedback to User Voice, all right? So there's a link there if you've got some ideas or things that you would like to see happening in our tools, you can actually go in and make suggestions in there. So again, I said this last time, but I want to help you redefine what's possible in your school using this technology, which has all been paid for by the department. So there's nothing that you have to buy. We'd love you to spread the word about the inclusive classroom, right? Especially for writing. Tell students, tell teachers, tell aides and education support staff, tell support professionals, speechies, OTs, those kinds of people. Tell the principals, tell parents and caregivers as well. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter, aka.ms/MEC newsletter. And then I've also got a series of links for you there. We've still got some great remote learning resources there. You can look at that more now as a hybrid sort of blended learning resources that are in there for you. You can also follow Microsoft Education on Twitter, and there's that website I told you about before, aka.ms/MEC accessibility. If you want to access today's recording, or you want to access a previous recording, you can do so at my YouTube page, which is aka.ms/TroyYT. And I'm going to ask Cindy to come off mute and tell us where we can find these videos and slides, etc., in our department space.
Thanks, Troy. So all you need to do is go to Edit and search for Microsoft Webinars.
Great. Okay, so edit and search for Microsoft Webinars. Before we hit Q&A, I will say that I am available for you to access on Twitter, on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Just go in and have a search for me. You'll know it's me because you'll see this little icon here. That's my avatar on all of them. And I have a lot of accessibility articles and all kinds of bits and pieces. It'll turn up in your feed. So Cindy, how are we going for questions? Is there anything that anyone's asking that's burning?
Yes, there's two that I want to ask you. So the first one is, can the read aloud be slowed down?
Definitely, most definitely. So read aloud can be slowed down inside the Word app, for example. So when I click on read aloud, you can see that over here I can, go backwards, forwards and play, etc. But you see this little settings button here. I can change my reading speed, slow it down. I can also change my voices and accents and all kinds of things as well. And remember, that can also be slowed down in the online version of Immersive Reader too.
The other one we had was they just wanted to clarify if this dictate option is available on searches on the web.
Is the dictate available?
On the web, so I guess if you're doing a Bing search or a Google search, if you could dictate into that.
To be able to do that, you'd have to actually, within a Windows environment anyway, you would have to actually set up the dictate inside Windows 10, which is not what I demoed today. So that is possible, but not with the tools that I've shown today. Okay, so what you would need to do is setting up dictate in Windows 10. So just go on to your favorite search engine, type in, set up dictate Windows 10, and then you'll actually get the instructions on how to set that up. But it is possible, yes.
Thank you. There was just one about getting the link again for subscribing to the newsletter.
Yep, sure. Let me bring that up for you. So if you want to get the newsletter there, it's aka.ms/MEC newsletter. But again, we'll make these slides available to you and all the links will be included in there.
And that was all. Thank you so much, Troy.
No worries at all. Okay, so I think that's it, and I'll say goodbye for today then. And you know, we'll see how we go if we're going to do the Inclusive Classroom 3, when we're going to look at maths tools, and we can also look at some of the translate tools and things that we can use for EAL students beyond Immersive Reader. So we'll keep you informed when that one's coming up. All right, thanks, Cindy, and I'll see everyone next time. Bye bye.